Hey, this is Darren. Before we get into today's episode, we had some recording issues with our guest. So if you hear some strange audio or if you're watching the video, you see some dropouts, don't worry, it's not you, it's us. Enjoy the episode.
I went from being a server to working at IBM in less than a year, and I went from server salary to six-figure salary less than a year, and I didn't feel like I deserved it. And I also saw the expertise of the people around me, and I felt so far behind. How am I ever going to catch up?
This is DevOps Paradox, episode number 241, From Restaurant Server to KubeCon Keynote in under 4 years. Welcome to DevOps Paradox. This is a podcast about random stuff in which we, Darren and Viktor, pretend we know what we're talking about. Most of the time, we mask our ignorance by putting the word DevOps everywhere we can and mix it with random buzzwords like Kubernetes, serverless, CI/CD, team productivity, islands of happiness, and other fancy expressions that make us sound like we know what we're doing. Occasionally, we invite guests who do know something, but we do not do that often since they might make us look incompetent. The truth is out there, and there is no way we are going to find it. P.S. It's Darren reading this text and feeling embarrassed that Viktor made me do it. Here are your hosts, Darren Pope and Viktor Farsick. Viktor, we have one of our good friends on with us as we're sliding into the holidays. Can anybody guess who it is?
I see her on the screen, so I don't need to guess.
Oh, you can see it. We have Whitney Lee on with us. Whitney, how are you doing? This is going to be one of those episodes already.
I'm laughing in the background.
Exactly.
I was trying to hold it back, but I couldn't.
It's fine. So, in case people aren't familiar with Whitney, now, if you listen to this podcast any, you know we typically don't talk about bios. We say the name, where they're working at. And by the way, Whitney's with VMware. But Whitney's bio is just so darn amazing. I've got to tell you. So let me look at it here. So what I have is she has 2 bachelor's degrees. She has one in mathematics and one in physics. Then she went on to get her master's in computer science, and she's currently working on her PhD in organic chemistry. So she's a Renaissance woman if there ever was one. Whitney, did I get all that right?
You got actually 0. None of that. That's all total baloney.
What? That's what this says here.
In 2018, my career was a server at the local vegetarian cafe. And also, within the past year, I've given 2 earned KubeCon keynotes.
Okay. So we have to back up to the 2018 vegetarian restaurant. I am guessing in the vegetarian restaurant, the plates weren't that heavy.
What are you talking about?
I
can carry like 3 of them on each arm.
Yeah, but you live in Texas though, right? It's not like you were in a barbecue restaurant in Texas to where you're having to carry
vegetarian food.
It's vegetarian food.
Tofu's pretty heavy too. Come on. It's not light.
It's dense. I don't consider it heavy. Whitney, thanks for coming on with us and putting up with some of the shenanigans. But, okay, so this is a very interesting story here. So you were working as a server in a restaurant.
Yeah.
At the time of recording, 5-ish years ago.
Yep. I wrote my first line of code, any kind of code ever, in January 2019.
Wow. That's been quite a ride, I guess, right?
You're telling me. I can't even stop to appreciate it. I have to just keep the next thing. I just got to do it. It's great. It's been such a joy. My life is a gift.
How did that transition start for you? Do you want to go even before that? Because usually when people work just at restaurants, there's usually something else on the side, and the restaurant is helping fund that side thing.
Yeah. Well, we'll go back. I do have a degree. I have a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Arts. My degree, my emphasis is photography. I have a minor in art history, and I graduated, I think, in 2003, quite a long time ago now.
Look,
long enough to forget everything about art
quite
history.
a long time ago. Look, let's just say 20 years before I was graduating. So we'll leave it there.
Nice. Okay. without getting in too deep, too far, it's I had most of my adult career up until this point was as a wedding photographer. I spent 10 years as owner operator of a wedding photography business. I think I personally have photographed 500 weddings, and my business did something more like 1,200. I had several photographers who worked for me. So I thought I got really super duper burnt out on that, and I quit very hard and fast. My brother is a professional musician. His project is called Mutual Benefit. He actually had an album just come out. It's fantastic. And
not that you're biased.
No bias at all. No nepotism here. And so then in 2014 it was, I think 2013, he had an album come out called Love's Crushing Diamond that got a lot of attention, and he needed to put together a live band to tour, and he asked me to be in the band. So at that point, I'd owned and operated my wedding photography business for 10 years, and I hated it. I hated every minute of it. And so when he asked me to be in the band, I was like, heck yes. And I quit. I dissolved my business. I spent almost all of my savings returning couples' wedding deposit money. My partner at the time, we'd been together 8 years. They weren't supportive, and I got rid of them. I put everything into a storage unit, and I lived without an address for a year, touring around playing in Mutual Benefit. That was about 10 years ago.
So then from the 10 years up until 2019, you were doing odd jobs, I would guess. Or were you doing, what other things were you doing?
Yeah, I toured for that year, and I got back. I drove for Lyft for a while, and then I worked for like a fancy sushi restaurant before I switched just working for the cute vegetarian restaurant. And then for a minute, I thought I wanted to be a commercial airline pilot, so I was pursuing that route. Victor, why is that so funny?
No, kind of, yeah. That's what people usually do.
That is what like 40-year-old women usually do.
I was about to describe it as midlife crisis, but I'll let you go on. Yes.
All I knew is I was not going to pick up a camera again. And we can dig in on, like, with wedding photography, there's so much to do with people's emotions and having to figure out their freaking family dynamics and their egos and who the stakeholders are. And it was very circular. I was doing the same thing over and over again. It was very much like software. So then I couldn't be an airline pilot, and my son was in college for computer science at the time, and he was like, hey, mom, you would like this. I think you would like coding. So then I tried it out in January 2019, and I did like it. So I went to a boot camp that started in July. Well, let's see. I did hundreds of hours of prep to be able to get into that boot camp. The boot camp started in July. That was 11-hour days, 6 days a week. And I graduated in October. And then I was a cloud developer at IBM in November of 2019. So it all happened within 1 year.
Wait. Okay, stop.
Yeah.
Okay, I was being whiplashed by being on the tour bus and then going to thinking about being a pilot, but then in an 11-month span, you went from zero knowledge, and now much less, I would assume, cash out of pocket, to now working for IBM, one of the oldest computing companies in the world, in 11 months.
This is true. That happened. Yeah. I was hired to be on the Cloud Pak acceleration team. And so Cloud Pak was a particularly specific suite of products they had. There are lots of different Cloud Paks for integration, Cloud Pak for applications, whatever. And so they hired a lot of people fresh out of college or fresh out of boot camps. And then our job was to go around to different client sites and make proof of concepts for the particular client to help sell these Cloud Paks. So that's what I got hired to do.
So you were getting hired to sell software.
I actually, I actually learned Kubernetes. Like my first exposure was Kubernetes was because I needed to know it for the job interview. Because my boot camp was a full stack web dev boot camp. It had nothing to do with cloud. We did need to deploy our application at some point. I did use Docker.
So you had 11 months of Node.js or something like that.
Yep.
Bootcamp, and then you said
React. Yep.
I'm going to get a job with Kubernetes.
Yep, exactly. Okay. And I had no idea what was going on. I remember like people talking about nodes, boxes, machines, VMs, all when describing Kubernetes clusters. And at some point, it dawned on me that they just mean computers. It's just a bunch of computers. Why don't people just say But so for a while, the jargon alone, it takes a long time to figure out. Maybe we should focus more on what I do know before we dig into all I don't know.
No. What I'm going to say is going to sound strange because somebody might be listening audio only, but we have a video as well, and I understand now why Darin chose this to use as a topic for our video version of it, because his face is just precious. This cannot be described in audio format. Yes. So continue. Yeah, please. I'm listening to you, Whitney, and I'm looking at Darin all the time. This is very strange, but yes, that's what's going on here.
So what do you know? Well, here's what I was trying to tie back. So IBM sent you out to sell Cloud Pak, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever that's called, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing that you were able to lean on being the wedding photographer, being, I'm assuming, the front person for a band, working in food service. All those things had to help inform how to sell something as strange to you at that point in time as Cloud Pak.
Now when I think about it, I understand completely, because if you survive dealing with neurotic brides
and grooms, it's everybody.
And grooms, okay, let me not be sexist. Yes, exactly, both of them. The rest must be easy, right?
Everything is compared to wedding photography, therefore it's all cakewalk. I will 100% say that wedding photography and the service industry had got my soft skills very, very much in place. I feel like I'm an excellent communicator. With wedding photography, there'd be assumptions that got made, and so I learned how to root them out. I remember one wedding, I took lovely portraits of the bride and groom. I took full length, close up, from the front, from the back, with them looking over their shoulders, like details of their outfits, like fully documented, beautiful in every way. But because I didn't take one at the front of the church at the altar, then the bride's parents were so mad. It's as though I didn't photograph the wedding at all. But like that photo's not important to me. So there are little assumptions like that get made all the time in wedding photography, and I sometimes the best way to root them out is just to ask straight up. But just emotions being high, like people having a lot of ego at stake and caring how much they're involved, it's all very similar to software, selling software. Figuring out who the stakeholder is, who's paying. Yeah.
This is why you're here today. Well, there's numbers of reasons why you're here today, because your laugh is infectious, number one.
She's officially called Laughing Lady. I have it written.
And that's great. But helping people understand, just because you are fresh out of college and you're not making the $300,000 that you expect to make, I will say it because usually I'm the one that puts my foot in my mouth. Get a life. Sometimes you got to pay dues. Yeah. And guess what? Coming through your route, so let's rewind 20 years, right? Because you got out of college first time 20 years ago. Do you think if you'd have gone straight into what you're doing today, would you be where you are today?
Oh, hell no. I say all the time, thank God I didn't have this job when I was younger. I could not have handled it. There's no way. My ego would have been bad. My impulse control would have been bad. Because part of my job as a developer advocate is to travel around the world and speak at conferences. And every conference organizer wants to take care of us and gives us unlimited food and alcohol. And I just wouldn't have done well with all of that excess, any of it. And no.
Why are you looking at me while you're telling this? Why are you doing that?
I'm grateful that this didn't happen to me until I was older. I don't think it could have, but also if it did, I'm glad it didn't.
I think everybody else is glad it didn't too, because otherwise we probably wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, I'd be thinking I was too good to be here.
Ooh, we can go down lots of rabbit trails with that one.
I'm kidding. I'm messing with you.
Happy holidays to everyone. Holy cow. Okay.
I'm kidding.
So,
No, that's why I suggested that we invited Whitney, because if she does a third keynote in KubeCon, we'll never see her again. Kind of like that will be the last time she will be hanging with mortals ever again.
True.
if she does, okay. So let's bring those up. So we're transitioned into where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
So you've done 2 legit, earned, not paid. That's what we mean by earned, not paid.
Not sponsored, yeah.
Not sponsored, KubeCon keynotes.
Yeah.
And those were at?
Last year, KubeCon Detroit, KubeCon NA in Detroit. And then Viktor and I together just did one KubeCon China last month.
I don't remember that.
No.
He doesn't remember anything before yesterday, so don't worry about it. I've gotten used to that.
Yeah.
So, by the way, congratulations. I already congratulated him, but
Thank you.
people don't really understand, number one, what it takes to get to a keynote. And to be able to land it if people don't understand your backstory. Okay, number one, if you want a keynote, you can. But what's it going to cost? Not money, but what's it going to cost for you to get there? Whitney's story is very interesting because she's 4 years into this. Math? Yeah, 4 years. I'm 40 years into this. I've never keynoted. Right? I'm jealous. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm just jealous. and not really at the same time.
Yeah.
So thinking back now 4 years ahead, or looking now, just returning back from China, how have things been great and how have things been like, that wasn't what I expected?
Everything has been great. I don't have any complaints. Well, for one thing, I don't love looking ahead. I just like to keep my head down, learn about what I find interesting, keep my daily routine, which involves an hour of studying every day. Just be really grateful for where I am. Since I had many, many years doing something that made me unhappy and I felt trapped, now that I am doing something that I absolutely love and I get to travel and I get to create and I get to learn, every day is a gift. And I really can't bring myself to be like, now I want this, because I'm like, now, like every day I just want to earn the fact that I get to be here today. I want to do with my best with what's on my plate at this moment. And whatever happens from that will happen from that. I can't foresee what that will be, and I don't want to.
One word you just used in that sentence, I want to earn this.
Yeah.
Or I'm rephrasing you just a little bit. Do you see people that just don't really care about earning it today?
I don't like to speak unkindly of other people.
Viktor, do you want to take that one?
Oh, yes. I mean, that's yes. My answer is definitely yes. I don't necessarily see it as a negative thing, right? Kind of, especially younger generation kind of feels entitled to things, and to me that's power to you. Kind of like, go for it, right? Kind of, hey, I'm fresh out of the college and I don't accept anything for less than 250K. I find it ridiculous, But on the other hand, kind of great, right? Kind of, yeah, power to you. If you can get that fresh out of the college, go for it. Kind of there shouldn't be guilt, right? Kind of. So being entitled in my head is not really, or knowing what you want and having high expectations is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Sometimes I'm trying not to sound like a Muppet on a balcony. The old guys go, you kids. But yes, the answer is yes.
When I see that unearned confidence, a lot of times I just feel it in my heart easily, but having a lot of confidence really does come in handy. So sometimes I'll channel it, or if I'm presented with an opportunity that I don't feel like I have earned, or I don't feel like I'm good enough for, then I think about someone like you described, Viktor, and then I try to be like, okay, what would they do? They would accept this hands down, feel like they deserve it, and so I'm gonna do as they would do. I'm gonna channel it.
I guess really what I was trying to get back to was work ethic. You have a strong work ethic. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't, being a wedding photographer, number one, my daughter's done that. She did it for 4 years. She's like, I'm done. So you made it longer than her. Going through all those things, so now you're able to, again, as you were saying, when something's presented to you, you're grateful, you're accepting of it, and you can also, I would assume, say, no thank you, like you could have said to this request for this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Which I never would.
Well, you could, but it'll be fine because we know
because you had only 2 keynotes so far, yes.
So what do you find? You said you don't like looking way into the future.
No.
But I'm assuming you're at least looking into middle of 2024. Like just like loose planning, right?
Yeah. All right. I'll give you that.
Which direction are you sort of heading in right now in your learning? Are you hopping on the AI bandwagon? Are you, if you're watching this on the video, you'll see over Whitney's left shoulder, she has this cool light board. So, by the way, you should check out her YouTube channel, but because this is where she uses the light board. But I see the word Cilium over there, which means, are you learning eBPF? Are you learning, what is your sort of direction flowing right now as you're heading into 2024?
A couple of things. Viktor and I make a show together called You Choose. And so it's a choose your own adventure through the CNCF landscape, which is actually what we did our keynote on in China. But we're starting chapter 3 of that in January, and that's going to have to do with security. So every episode is a system design choice, and then we'll invite someone from CNCF projects for each. So the first one, do you remember the first episode, Viktor? This is going to be...
It's about security. It's about security.
Let's just say there's an MTLS episode, and we're going to be talking about different service mesh options for MTLS. So we'll have Cilium on, we'll have Linkerd on, we'll have Kuma on, and Istio. And so, and then each of those projects, we'll have a maintainer on from each project. They get 5 minutes to present their project. And then we have a Q&A session about it, and then the community votes. And whichever one wins gets implemented into our ongoing demo. We never talk about this part, but we also have like a repo, like a GitHub repo that goes alongside our show. And Viktor does the integration and the coding, but then I do all the words about here, this is what the steps mean. This is what each project is. This is how it works. This is how they're different from each other. And to help me get ahead of doing that on You Choose, on my Enlightening show, I'll learn about those projects beforehand. So Duffy Cooley is going to come on Thursday this week, which will be later for y'all since you're hearing this later. So find the recording, but Duffy's going to come on and teach me about Cilium as part of my Enlightening show. And then I'll have that knowledge ready for when Viktor and I do You Choose.
That's what I believe makes that Lightning series special. This is the first time that there might be somebody else, right? I just don't know about it. But let's say if not nobody, then not many approach the work from the perspective, I don't know anything about it, can you teach me, right? Usually somebody is an expert, or more often pretends to be an expert. That's the most common scenario, right? But in your case, Lightning are more like, if I understood right, it's kind of, okay, hey, Cilium folks, I know nothing about this. Teach me about it online in a way, right?
Yep. So someone from Cilium comes on, and not only are they teaching me about it, but they can't screen share or share any code themselves. They have to do it verbally. And then I'm the one with the light board and writing it down as I understand it. And so since I'm writing it down too, I can't just say, oh yeah, I understand, when I don't actually understand. I have to be able to clearly articulate what they're teaching me and say it back to them and write it down. So yeah, it's been a really fun show to make. It's weird. But now that I'm up to 60 episodes. So it's part of how I know a lot. And so I get, okay, part of the reason that I've accelerated learning, one is I get these one-on-one lessons from experts where I ask a bajillion questions. Two is I ask a bajillion questions. I never pretend to know something I don't. I'd rather say I don't know. I don't care how silly I look, like when I don't understand what a box is, or I remember having to look up grep when I was first starting to learn Kubernetes. What's grep? Anything about Linux. I actually had to stop learning Kubernetes and switch over to figuring out what Linux commands are and then go back to Kubernetes. But anyway, point is, willing to make myself look silly by asking questions. And then the third thing I would say is that I'm very, very consistent about studying every day.
What makes you want to study? I mean, what is on the inside of you that's like, 1 hour, I've got to do this?
It's part of my routine, and I find it relaxing. At first, I went from being a server to working at IBM in less than a year, and I went from server salary to six-figure salary less than a year, and I didn't feel like I deserved it. And I also saw the expertise of the people around me, and I felt so far behind. How am I ever going to catch up? So that's when I started the study habit. It was kind of born out of insecurity or feeling like, or imposter syndrome, combination thereof. But then once now at this point, I love it. It's like now it's comforting and I enjoy it. And I like learning about cloud stuff.
So I'm guessing you in general are a very routine driven person.
Yes, this is true.
So if things aren't planned, not necessarily to the final dot, but if not close, you're going, I need structure, please. Is that true or not true?
It used to be more true. I think as I learn more and get more comfortable in my knowledge, I'm a lot looser in terms of what I hope happens.
It also, and you can slap me virtually now if you need to. Now that you're getting older, it also happens that way too. Trust me, as I'm 20 years in front of you, it's like, yeah, I'm not as bad as I used to be.
The older I get, the less I care what people think about me. So that feels good.
Okay, we can spend the next 3 hours talking about that, but we won't. I want to go back to what you said about you were working on learning Kubernetes and realized, oh, I really need to go learn Linux, and then I'll come back. When did that light bulb really go off? I mean, you mentioned grep, but what was the thing? It's like, oh, wait, I don't know the foundations that I really need to know. Was that it, or was it something else?
The Kubernetes course that I found my way to is like Udemy, an Udemy Kubernetes course. I can't remember what it's called. It was many years ago. But there was just a lot of assumed knowledge around Linux. And I didn't know enough to know that Linux was the thing that was being assumed. But it was just like, all you do is run, all you do is set this flag or set this config variable, this environment variable, so like the three different ways you could set a kubeconfig file, for example. Here's where it's located in your directory. You could set it as a flag, or you could set it as an environment variable. I didn't understand what any of that meant. They would have diagrams for how it worked, and I would understand that, and then they'd switch into the command line and be like, here's how you do it. And I would just have no clue what was happening on that side. And I realized that there was something I needed to figure out before, and then I somehow figured it out. It was Linux, I think, just by talking to a friend. I don't know what else to say about that. The amount I didn't know was negative. I knew a negative amount somehow about Kubernetes.
Well, Victor has said that exact path before, whether he learned it from you or not. It's like people come to us and it's like, okay, well, I want to get into Kubernetes. It's like, okay, well, do you know what a shell is?
Yeah, I didn't.
Because that's sort of like step one, unless you're in a really bad Udemy course.
I got a book called The Linux Command Line, I believe, and started to read that.
Yeah, and courses cannot. There is no way on earth that anybody will ever create a course that will teach you everything you need to know about something without making certain assumptions, right? Unspoken assumptions. Otherwise, it can be anything. Okay, so I don't know how to turn on the computer. It never said in a course, right? Or I mean, I'm exaggerating a bit, but there are some unspoken assumptions always, right? No matter how good somebody is at creating courses.
Yes.
What else? What else is driving you in what you're doing now? I mean, you're heading now into your 5th year. So what makes this 5th year going to be any different than the 4th year?
I'm finally starting to get to a point where I am saying no to things. So that's, I guess, good. So maybe I'm a little more choosing based on what I like instead of based on just anything that comes my way. Victor and I are talking about writing a book together, so that's probably something I'll work on in 2024. And I think that has to do with, well, one is I've done a lot of it by working in the repo that we worked on for You Choose. So it's kind of low-hanging fruit, as they say. 2 is I like working with Victor, so that makes me want to go that way. And then the 3 is I think this is silly, but there's some status or something. It feels good. I think the accomplishment of being able to say I'm a published author. I think I would like that.
If you would be a man, that's when you start wearing a bow tie.
Yeah. Once I'm a published author, the published author bow tie.
Exactly. Then you need to give certain appearance, right? It's the same thing like either published author or doctor of, putting DR in front of your name. It's one of those 2 things.
I can say a little bit more about my study technique. It's very deliberate. So I have 2 brothers. One brother, the musician we talked about, he's great. My other brother, his name is Caleb. He taught himself Japanese, and he's fluent now. He's passed the proficiency exams and could move there if he wanted. And it's all self-taught. And he did that by reading a book called Fluent Forever. And so Fluent Forever the whole first part of the book is about learning a lot of information at once. So that's what language learning is a magnitude of learning. And so I took those techniques that are outlined in that book to learn a lot of information at once, but instead of learning a language, I learned cloud technologies. And I still use that the learning techniques from that today. So I use Anki, it's called ANKI, which is a spaced repetition learning. Like it's a supercharged flashcard app that works on my phone and my computer. And so whenever there's something I want to remember, I make a flashcard out of it. And then it goes into my normal, every day the app just tells me how many flashcards to study. And so once it gets into my brain, because the spaced repetition, okay, so if I learn something now, I'll get it introduced to it again 1 minute from now, and then again 10 minutes from now. And if I get it every time, I'll see it again tomorrow. And if that's right, I'll see it 3 days from now, and then a week from now. And so the space in between when I see it next, it gets bigger and bigger. And so some of my older cards, I've been doing this as long as I've been studying Kubernetes, so since the beginning of IBM times. Those older cards, once I get them right, I might not see them again for 5 years, because that's when, but that information will stick in my brain. So at IBM, I learned how to install OpenShift. So I still know how to install OpenShift, at least that old way. I'm sure they don't even do it like that anymore. But yeah.
Those that you will see 5 years from now, you can just as well remove them.
They're almost like keepsakes. They're like memories. Like, aw. Some of them either because the technology's totally outdated or like cute little baby Whitney who didn't know what grep meant wrote that card, It's a constant reminder of how far I've come.
So that book was called Fluent Forever.
Yes.
And you were saying you learned
language
computers
learning.
as if you were learning a language.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You were learning a language.
Yeah, it was.
It's just not a communication language. Well, but in fact it is.
There's enough jargon. Yeah. There's enough jargon.
It's like if you're watching TV on any of the medical shows or the legal shows, you always hear the actors talking about always having to do the techno babble or whatever, the medical speak or whatever the phrasing is. Our life is nothing but babble.
It's true.
Especially when you're doing keynotes. So for you, I'm assuming being on stage is not a big deal.
I've had a lot of practice being on stage. Before I was in my brother's band, I also played in bands in Austin. And then, KubeCon keynote, I really did feel like I wanted to vomit beforehand because I was on the verge of being too new to be up there. I learned a lot from scratch to be in. I was afraid. I was still learning the jargon. I was afraid I'd phrase something wrong that sounded silly to ears, people who really understood. And I also, we didn't have speaker notes, and for that particular one, I don't know. I was very nervous, but it went really well. And part of what makes it good is that I am a new learner still, even though I've been able to learn a lot in a short period of time. I remember what it's like not to know. And I think that I still do a good job of explaining concepts in a way that's clear, no matter what your skill level is. So just like Viktor said, like there is some knowledge that has to be assumed, but I think I have more awareness than people who have been in the field longer about what's being assumed. Because it was just 5 minutes ago that I was the one lost because of that assumption.
Do you try to stay a new learner all the time? Is that just inside of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like with Enlightening, anytime actually, if any acronym is used, I just have to, I'm compelled, I just have to say the full acronym one time. Even things that, like a CIDR block, people who say CIDR block all the time might not know. It's like classless interdomain routing right off the bat. But I just for me, I don't know, for my learning style, or maybe it has to do with the way you said I'm a planner and I like to dot my I's and cross my T's. I don't like using an acronym without knowing what the acronym is standing for.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big difference. By default, you just ask whatever is unclear, right? Well, yeah. I and Darin will know that from streams. Sometimes I kind of when he's speaking, I just kind of do this. And that means that I'm Googling it. There is no way I'm going to ask. There is no way I'm going to ask. Absolutely not, right? If you leave me in the middle of China without my mobile phone, I will still not ask anybody kind of how to get somewhere. If it takes 7 days to get to the hotel, that's what it takes.
Why do you think you're reluctant to ask?
I don't know. It's just not something I do.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, we are near the end of this show, so you have no time to start psychoanalyzing me and come to a conclusion how this is a childhood memory that I was beaten by bullies when I asked what's the time, and that resulted in me never asking again.
Oh, that's right. Your doctorate was actually going to be psychology, or psychiatry, not psychology. Either one. Probably a double doctorate.
Yeah, of course. Uh-huh.
So here we are again. You are our last guest for the year of 2020. This is 2023, right? It's all been a blur for 3 years.
Still.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tell okay.
Me, yeah.
Actually, that's interesting because we haven't gone out, and we'll wrap up here pretty quick. You started your first line of code, went to IBM in November of 2019, so 11 months. And then 4 months after, the world shut down.
Yep.
What was that like?
It was good for my career because that's when, right before that happened, in the IBM workspace, in the IBM Austin Slack workspace, someone put Jason Good put up a call for SMEs, which I didn't even know what SME stood for, subject matter expert at the time. But basically put out a call for people to be on the IBM Cloud YouTube channel, which is a Lightboard-based thing. And at that point, I'd been at IBM for less than 6 months, so I was still barely wrapping my head around Linux and Kubernetes and all of that. But I have experience in front of camera, on both sides of the camera. So I filled out the Google form just to get more information about it. And then I was shocked during the pandemic, right when the essential employees were allowed to start going back to the office, they opened up the IBM Cloud Lightboard Studio again, and they contacted me and asked me to make Lightboard videos for the IBM Cloud YouTube channel. So my very first video, it came out in August, I think. So I'd been at IBM I'd known about Kubernetes for less than a year. I made an IBM Cloud video called What is etcd? And I authored it and stuff, like I made it. I didn't do any of the production of it, of course, but I did write all of the concepts and all the words were genuinely my words. But that started me making a series of Lightboard videos. I did 7 of them for IBM, including it. Right now, if you Google what is RabbitMQ, like my little face will come up, or what is Kafka, my little baby Whitney comes up. And I think those videos were successful partly because I was a very true beginner explaining concepts to other people who are watching those videos who are true beginners. Again, with the assumptions, not making assumptions because I didn't even know assumptions I would make yet. So the short answer, the pandemic was good for me. I think maybe from a learning perspective, in terms of actually doing the job of building out proof of concepts, maybe not as good for me because in those client meetings, so I only went to one in-person client site before the pandemic. And then once then it all moved virtual, and then everyone kept their cameras off. And so I would be sent to shadow things, but no one could see each other's face or really and they were pretty long, boring meetings. Sorry, IBM. I think it's consistent though. It's not just IBM specific. So I think in terms of learning the stuff, it was harder without more human interaction, that particular stuff. But it sent me on the Lightboard journey.
Meetings are the part where people really realize how good it is to be remote, right? Because in person you cannot fake. You cannot read a book while you're in person meeting, right?
Yeah, but back then I didn't know what I was so eager to feel like I belonged and to feel like I deserved the money I was being paid, that I was contributing, that I was doing my best to pay full attention to those long and boring meetings because I wanted so badly to do well.
An amazing story. So I'm sure we'll be hearing from Whitney again at some point in the future.
We already said no. She will have sooner or later.
Well, that's true.
That's not true.
That's what we'll hear from her is that no. We'll just hear no, and that's fine.
Never.
And by the way,
never.
Every single celebrity said the same thing early on, kind of like, I will always be me. This is me. I will always be like this. And they all end up either ignoring their fans later on or drug addicts. One of the two things. So
or both. They're not mutually exclusive.
Both, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Never.
So we'll have all of Whitney's information down in the episode description. But Whitney, if people wanted to check out what you're doing, where would you send them right now? If there was one place, where should they go?
Tanzu.tv/Whitney.
Wait, stop. You're a path on the Tanzu.tv domain. And you're going by your first name. So now you're now you're Beyonce. Now you're Cher.
I'm worried that I have it wrong. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I think I'm wrong.
We're recording this early so you could tell them to go ahead and get it fixed.
I don't know. Just go to tanzu.tv and then there's /Enlightening. But tanzu.tv, and then if you go under advocates, I'm one of the advocates. So you find me there, and then you can see links to the keynotes. There's links to You Choose and Enlightening. And I also am a CNCF ambassador, and I'm one of the hosts of CNCF Live. It's called Cloud Native Live. CNCF stands for Cloud Native Computing Foundation.
Look, I have learned more about acronyms from you today than I have cider block. I didn't remember. I learned it 20 years ago. I don't remember what it meant.
Cider blocks for like at least 20 years or something like that. First time I heard what it means. I already forgot what it means, but I know that I heard it. Yes.
Yeah.
I doubt that it's actually even written in AWS anywhere. I doubt that.
Whitney, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I will always come back forever.
We'll see.
It's so much easier for us to say she's a celebrity, she doesn't want to come back, than to say the truth, kind of like, we're not inviting this one again.
Yes.
I'm just trying to find a graceful exit.
Yeah, there's not one. Let's just say...
Thanks for helping me save face, y'all.
We hope this episode was helpful to you. If you want to discuss it or ask a question, please reach out to us. Our contact information and a link to the Slack workspace are at devopsparadox.com/contact. If you subscribe through Apple Podcast, be sure to leave us a review there. That helps other people discover this podcast. Go sign up right now at devopsparadox.com to receive an email whenever we drop the latest episode. Thank you for listening to DevOps Paradox.